must be very liberating in many ways to just have this very defined audience in your head, and an audience that you know so well, that if you can write for your mom and your two sisters, that
Hmm.
that is what you want to be doing, that's success for you as an artist.
Right.
um were you did you is that maybe why you also seem so liberated from the concerns about genre? Because
Yeah.
you kind of you jumped genres with every single book, so, and there's all this wisdom, there's all this perceived, wisdom handed down about staying in the same genre for at least three books before you move on, or all of that how did you experience genre? Like, did you even, you said that you don't think about a Western audience. It sounds like you actually don't think about any reading audience other than your mom and your sisters. Did that apply also to genre, that because you don't have an audience, you can just be free to write what you feel like writing next?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think genre is a very artificial construct. And there's been some interesting scholarly work about this, is that this is actually a couple of centuries old with the setting up of the modern publishing industry and relating to money and budgets and bookstores. Because you need to way to organize bookstores, right? The shelves. You need to
Mhm.
be able to say this is that and this is the other. Um, so, and I mean, personally, I read books of all sorts, right? Whether and uh, uh, whether you're this or that, right? Like I don't care whether it's supposed to be a like a best-selling, crowd-pleasing book or some high rarefied New Yorker fiction, right? I find great writers in both realms or all of these realms. I'm a big sci-fi reader, and I find some very bad, very boring writers in the New Yorker, right, or
Mhm,
the
mhm.
Atlantic, right? So I think like reading across whatever this thing called genre is a good idea. And again, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about Sacred Games, which is a big book about cops and gangsters and spies in the Indian subcontinent and elsewhere. Um, I'm obviously very aware of these traditions, right? The gangster novel, the crime novel, and I love in the book before that, the book of short stories. That's actually a riff on genres, right? Of different kinds of stories that I like. So ghost
Mhm,
stories, I love ghost stories. So I
mhm,
tried, okay, I'm going to try and write a ghost story, right? And then I love police procedurals, right? And I thought, okay, I'll try and do one, right?
mhm,
and
mhm,
so I did. I like playing with received forms, as it were, but
mhm,
I don't think you have to be confined by them. You can twist them, right? And I think the yeah, like I was saying, like it's a lot of fun to look into forms and then like where they've been deployed and how they've been deployed. One thing I will say, I hate the phrase that is sometimes used when a literary, quote unquote, literary writer writes in a genre, and the critic will say, "Well, this novel transcended genre." It's like, what the hell are you talking about, right? There's good writing in every kind of like structure of story, right?
right.
The received tradition, and why people think that literary fiction, quote unquote, is better than the other, I will never understand.
Or with some people, worse, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Some
absolutely. Yeah,
people just assume if it's literary, it has to be boring as batshit.
yeah,
But but so actually on that, I actually want I find this very encouraging. I'm sure that my writers out there, the writers out there who are listening to us find it encouraging too in many, many ways. And I want to um use your success to actually prove that this in fact can be true, that you can just jump genres and write from the heart, and it can work out for you in terms of success. So the red earth and pouring rain, and like I said, I'm not going to go through the full list, everyone. So these are just the highlights. Won the Commonwealth Writers Prize for Best First Book and the David Hyam Prize for Fiction. I hope I pronounced David's name right. And then the short story collection that you just mentioned, Love and Longing in Bombay, um, published by the same suite of publishers. And I want to come back and talk to you and ask you a question about that. But it was shortlisted, won the Commonwealth Writers Prize for the best book in the Eurasia region, was shortlisted for the Guardian Fiction Prize, was included in the notable or best books list of the New York Times Book Review, The Independent, The Guardian, Outlook Magazine, And that year you were featured in the New Yorker's photograph of India's leading novelists. So that's a lot of acclaim to absorb in 2 or 3 short years. And this is going to sound like a strange question, but how did it feel really? Because I imagine as good as it felt, it might also be quite intimidating. Was it?
Yeah, I mean, of course it felt good, right? Even getting published, of course, for any of us is a big deal, right? And I was in my mid-30s, and I think that is actually pretty early for writers, right? So after many years of being, wondering, like all of us do, like, do I really have the ability to get published, right? Does anybody want to listen to me? And then when the books started to do well, yeah, it was very exciting. And then also I should say that apart from success or non-success, when you start reading reviews of your own work, that can be really quite an adventure, right? Because of course you love the good reviews, and then I got some horrible, horrible reviews for both of these books, right? And you have to kind of finally, I learned that you have to not take either one too seriously, right? You have to just like, if you get a good one, it's like a random gift from the universe. If you get a bad one, that is also a random gift, right? And it takes some days to get over a really, really bad one, but you got to deal with it, right? But I mean, I would say mostly it was great. Also because I was able to then get a job, which actually had health insurance, which is to say I started teaching at universities. And then one other reassuring thing is that you can do it, right? You can get a book finished and you can get it out there, which is satisfaction enough, right? In some ways. And like I said, I've been very, very lucky. I've been kind of blessed.
Well, congratulations. It's so much, it's such applause, very rare, very, very rarely heard. And it kind of keeps going on because we're only at book 2 at the moment. So actually, before we move on, I did want to ask, because I noticed it was the same suite of publishers, was your book of short stories, was that sold at the same time? Was it the second part of a 2-book deal, or was the success of the first book so great that they immediately wanted something,
No, so when we signed for Red Earth, my agent Eric Simonoff, of course, was instrumental in that. Little Brown wanted a first look deal, so that's often the way it's done, right? So you publish one book, and then they get first look and first bid at it, and if they don't want it, then you can take it to other people. But if they say yes, then and you have to make the deal more or less. So that's what happened. And then with the third one, we changed, right?
Okay, and then before you got to the third one, though, you kind of took a little pivot and went back to film. You co-wrote Mission Kashmir, which had an international release in October 2000. So tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Oh, so that was kind of a family thing. So I was doing research for my third book, Sacred Games, and I went up to Kashmir, right, where there have been some really tragic troubles for the past many, many decades. And I was just like wandering around and interviewing people, as I usually do when I'm working on a book. And I heard a particular story that I just then came back to and told to my brother-in-law, Vinod. And Vinod, as it happened, had grown up in Srinagar, in the capital of Kashmir. So he has a very, very deep attachment to it. And his family actually had to flee at one point from Srinagar when things got really bad. And it struck a chord with him. And so then he said, I want to make this film. And then with 2 other writers, we started developing the story. So it was just like, I didn't plan it. It just kind of happened. And it was fun. I mean, it's the first time, even though it was in collaboration, to write something on a piece of paper and then a couple of years later, see it like 40 feet high on a movie screen. It's quite extraordinary.
Right. And how was, I was going to ask this about Sacred Games, but I'll ask you now, like, how was that shift from, I think that most people actually don't realize how collaborative even the novel is, right? You write it all in your head, but at some point you have your readers and you have your editor or you have
Yeah.
whatever. So it's much more collaborative than most people at first think, but it's still not really all that collaborative when you compare it to like a movie. How did you find that? Did you find that frustrating? Some people find it incredibly frustrating because they have to give up control, and other people just love it because they find it so liberating. How was, especially with a family?
Look, I mean, I've grown up. I think I was in my late teens, I think 17, 18 when we moved to Bombay, and my mother got into film soon after that. So I've grown up around the industry, so I've seen it from the other side. So I know if you're a writer, whether you're a fiction writer or a screenwriter, just give it up. You're not going to have control, right? And you need to understand that this is not a writer's medium. Film is not a writer's medium. You're writing a blueprint for the director and the other crew to take and make art out of. The art comes from the cinematographer, the lighting, the depth of field, the cutting, the editor, the actors, majorly the actors, the people who do the music, and all the crew who work on it, right? So you have to learn right from the start to let go, right? It's, even if you're a screenwriter, you write a screenplay and then, like there's days on the set where you're supposed to do a big outdoor shoot and it starts raining, right? So like the elements are going to conspire to change the vision that you had. So I didn't mind that too much, but again, for me, collaboration, even in that small sense of working with Vinod and 3 other writers, it's kind of fun because you're bouncing ideas around and things come together, and then you talk the next day and you have a problem and you kind of find a solution. But again, it's not what I do in my bones, right? So I have to say also, at the same time that I was doing that, I was working on fiction as well, right? So all the time, right through it.